No, Trump did not win the election because he was specially chosen by God to save America. And before my Maga friends get too offended by that, let me also say he didn't choose Biden or any other president in history because that's not how this works. Let's talk about it in today's 5 Minutes in the Bible. So there's 3 reasons people usually think a president or other world leader is specifically chosen by God to lead. The first is that they usually tie that leader to Old Testament teachings about nations and authorities and Old Testament prophecies about the rise and fall of nations. But these verses are misapplied to any modern day nation or modern day election or modern day world leader. If you want to understand why, go back and check my video, 5 Minutes in the Bible, episode 3, The Kingdom and the Nations, because that will explain what has changed and why that stuff no longer applies. The second reason people will often claim that a world leader, or in this case particularly a president of the United States, is specifically chosen to lead the nation by God is because they believe that candidate or that candidate's party is more specifically Christian and more biblical than the other party. That is absolutely not true. But that goes a little bit beyond the scope of what I'm going to be talking about today, so I'm probably going to save that for another video in my series, A Closer Look. What we are going to talk about today is the third reason people often believe that God has installed or chosen specific leaders or candidates to lead us, and that is God's sovereignty and what he says about authority in the world. And in that case, we're going to look at Romans chapter 13 and see what it has to say. Romans chapter 13, the first 7 verses. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those authorities that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists authority resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Do you wish to have no fear of authority? Then do what is good, and you will receive its approval. For it is God's servant for your good. But if you do what is wrong, you should be afraid. For the authority does not bear the sword in vain. It is the servant of God to execute wrath on the wrongdoer. Therefore, one must be subject not only because of wrath, but also because of conscience. For the same reason, you also pay taxes. For the authorities are God's servants, busy with this very thing. Pay to all what is due them. Taxes to whom taxes are due, revenue to whom revenue is due, respect to whom respect is due, honor to whom honor is due. So a lot of times people will point to verses like that about God establishing authority and about the rulers in those positions being described as his servants. They'll also point to other verses that just talk about God's sovereignty, which is a fancy word meaning basically that he is in control of everything. And they will say, therefore, this leader was chosen by God to fill that position. But that is simply not what that verse teaches. See, what that verse teaches is that God has established the idea of government authority in general. And that anytime someone is exercising that authority, they are God's servant insofar as they are a part of that authority structure that God has created. God created this authority structure because he knows we live in a broken and sinful world. He knows that we live in a world where Without laws, without governing authorities to keep the peace, there would be anarchy. There would be might makes right. There would be always the strong oppressing the weak. This happens anyway, of course, but good government can help limit that. So God gave us the concept of government and governing authority to do just that. It isn't about any one party, any one candidate, any one leader, or even any one country or nation. This is true anywhere governing authority exists. And I think we have to be honest that a lot of the governing authority that exists is absolutely terrible. Dictatorships, authoritarianism. Things that have existed throughout history, people like Hitler and Stalin and Mao. Not all of these people have been good. Not all of these governments have been good. They certainly were not established by God in any specific way. And that means the good ones aren't either. That means even the ones you like aren't specifically chosen by God. They are simply the people that fill this need, that fill this system of a government authority, the idea of government authority that God has created. So either God did not choose any of them, or God chose all of them by allowing them. Either way, it's kind of a meaningless thing to talk about. Look, if you're happy Trump got elected, then be happy Trump got elected. But if you're trying to make a claim that somehow he was God's chosen candidate and that's why he got elected, Scripture, the Bible that so many of those same people claim to believe and follow, does not make that claim.